withdrawn. They become dimensions, laws and rules, never seen of themselves, but never absent from any compound that exists. Out of this then arises, as we have said, the being who, to the Greek mind, became the focal point, or the manifestation of things unmanifested. And this being was Zeus. Zeus being the surviving child of time. In other words, the child that time could not and did not dissolve. And this brings us to the nature of Zeus per se. Now, in this struggle between absolute life, absolute extent of matter, and the rule or the law moving among them, time, there was produced something which was the product now not of heaven and earth alone, but of heaven, earth, and time together operating. Now, if we have spirit, and we have matter, and we have time, and now we call this cause, effect, and we place between cause and effect another term meaning time, and this is opportunity. So we have cause, effect, and the opportunity or condition of experiencing them. We have spirit and matter, and we have experience. We have the mysterious power of time that becomes, so to say, the womb of the emergence of something. And this thing that emerges is, according to the Greek concept, an overbeing, a tremendous but not completely intangible creature. This creature, therefore, to them signified what to the Hindus we call the principle of para-Atman. This being was a first, a beginning of things. It had certain attributes, and these attributes we like to think of sometimes in our concept of consciousness. Buddha said that there is no such a thing as consciousness except that which results from the reaction of cause and effect. Cause and effect produces consciousness. Therefore, eternal cause and eternal effect, spirit and matter, through duration or the unfolding of things in an orderly sequence, produce together what we call consciousness. Now, this is root consciousness. This is not the kind of consciousness that says, I know, nor is it the kind of consciousness that says, I think, or I believe, or I observe. Because assuming that this consciousness arose in the mystery of space and matter, we know that space is invisible. Pure matter is invisible. Time is invisible. So none of this condition arose from the contemplation of externals. It arose from the interior experience of certain flashing awareness, or the discovery and the development of what the Greeks call the ox-eyed God, the mysterious God whose seeing is of an internal nature, like the ancient concept of Amitabha in Tibet, the contemplating Dhyana Buddha, that internalizes to know and externalizes to lose knowledge. This is a peculiar concept, but it is common to most people. So Zeus blazes forth as being the intuitive factor of the realization of the action of life and matter through time. Thus Zeus becomes, in a sense, the wisest of all gods, because he possesses the law of wisdom and endures in time. On the other hand, Zeus is strangely detached from all things that may be regarded as knowledge by man. Zeus represents, therefore, the flash of total awareness, apart from the process of knowing. In the Tibetan and the Hindu, we discover that thought is created before mind. Now this would be a bit of a stopper, as they used to say in England, but it is nevertheless true. And Zeus is the eternal thinker, thinking the non-eternal thought which is existence. Zeus, therefore, is the thinker who produces within itself a strange and mysterious power. Perhaps we would be better almost to say that Zeus is thought, as yet unembodied in a thinker. The thought by means of which, in its infinite ramification, a mind becomes necessary, but which in its own nature we do not recognize as necessary. Thus we have in Zeus a very strange basic value. And in the study or analogy between the Greek system of the universe and their microcosmic system, or the relationship to man, Zeus represented the total auric or magnetic field of man. He was this sphere of energy from which the body of man is derived, and which is the true abode of man, who dwells not in the body, but in the field of energy behind the body. Zeus, therefore, is an interesting deity, and we begin to understand now some of the things that he does. Most of the Greek gods are biformal. That is, they have two aspects, or two appearances by which we know them. Zeus is not. Zeus, however, has another attribute. He is polyphenomenal. Instead of taking on, for instance, another god of the Greeks that we can mention would be Hermes, or Mercury. We know Hermes among the Greek arts mostly as a young man with winged heels and a winged hat, carrying a caduceus or staff, and springing off into space, apparently, in the best architecture of such sculptors as Cellini. But this is not actually the only form. The old Greeks made the statue as that of a venerable old bearded man, robed in a heavy toga and leaning upon a staff, sometimes bound with a serpent and sometimes not. Thus there was what was called the old or aged Hermes and the young one. And the same is true of Dionysus, who is represented as an old bearded man or as a very effeminate youth with a garland of vine leaves in his hair. There were two distinct forms of each of these deities. In Zeus there is not. But Zeus has this other peculiarity of forever taking on other shapes. He takes on the form of the swan in the story of Leda. He takes on the form of the bull and abducts Europa. He is constantly taking on forms, but none of these forms are his own. And when whatever the escapade is that he is at present engaged upon, he returns to his own shape. Now, most of your deities in ancient times had this power to change their forms at will. The moment you represent or recognize Zeus as thought, or as a being, a principle, we then become aware that this principle is moving constantly through an infinite pageantry of forms and appearances. Therefore, that it should appear in countless forms is not unreasonable. especially if, as in the Greek mythology, all of the forms of Zeus are veiled references to the zodiacal forms.